Welcome, everybody, to the latest iteration of Nick's Yemen Roundup, covering the week 7 to 13 July 2025. Apologies for that mistake there in the title there. It is not June, it is July. And apologies as well for getting this iteration out a bit late. Normally, I try to get these out on Monday, but this past Monday, I was participating in a panel with the American Center for South Yemen Studies that hopefully will be available online for me to link in the description. So if you're interested in that, go check out the description. And if you can't find it there, go check out ACSYS. They do some very interesting work on South Yemen in particular. And I got to sit down with a couple other regional experts to discuss sort of what's been happening in Yemen for the last 6 months or so. So if you're interested in stuff like that, that's something to check out. But just my normal advertisement, for lack of a better word here. My name is Nick J. Brumfield. I hold an MA in Arab Studies from Georgetown University, and I have been studying Middle East politics on a professional level for a decade now. I am an expert regularly quoted in international media, specifically as it relates to the Yemen conflict, but I have done professional work on countries throughout the region, including the Gulf states, as well as parts of the Levant. I have extensive background in project and data management, as well as GIS capabilities, and have been doing political risk, business intelligence, and legal consulting for the last little while now. I'm open to other ideas as well if you think that my expertise might be of assistance to you. So if you are interested in that, either professionally or if you are seeking a media inquiry for an article that you're writing, please feel free to reach out to info.nickjbrumfield@gmail.com. That is where you can reach me. And I'll be happy to get back to you as soon as possible. If you're unable to, if you don't want to reach out like that, just don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Exposure is an underrated commodity in this modern international economy. So very much appreciate any support for the channel and for my work that you can give me. But with that, we can go ahead and get started, as always, with what's actually going on in Yemen, starting off with international affairs. And there's been a fair bit of movement, in particular at the United Nations for the last couple of weeks. We did see at the beginning of last week, UN Special Envoy Hans Grunberg traveled to Aden to meet with Yemeni government leadership. This past week, he is back internationally. Starting off the week, we did see him give his monthly address on 9 July to the UN Security Council. It's kind of a lot of boilerplate stuff, but we did see him express concern over the Houthi missile attacks that we saw over the course of the last week, as well as various troop movements. He did mention the potential for progress on the prisoner file between the Yemeni government and the Houthi-aligned authorities as a potential way forward, as well as recognizing the conflict over the economy, cooperation as also being a potential path forward with regards to that. He issued a separate statement on 10 July expressing deep concern over the Houthi maritime attacks following the Houthis' sinking of two ships, the Magic Seas and the Eternity Sea. The Houthis did respond to this. The Houthi-aligned foreign ministry issued a statement condemning what it said, called the bias in Grunberg's statement, and indicated that this is what made it difficult to engage with Grunberg in peace talks. That's kind of par for the course. The Houthis in particular, with relation to the UN, have gotten a lot more vocal as it relates to the UN, probably over the course of the last couple months, perhaps because humanitarian aid is drying up, just because a lot of countries don't want to give aid directly to territories, or even a country that has a rebel militia that's detained dozens of humanitarian aid workers and really kind of diverts a lot of aid and doesn't really respect any international humanitarian norms. So yeah, you could see them kind of getting angry over that. But yeah, this is kind of a continuation of that theme. We also did see at the UN a kind of a diplomatic spat between the United States, which called for the end to the UN's mission to support the Hadeda Agreement, which was established in 2018 to support the Stockholm Agreement ceasefire between the Houthis and Saudi-led coalition, in particular along the Yemen's western coast. the U.S. and I think a lot of critics, and I think it's a fair criticism, state that the UN mission to support the Hadith Agreement is no longer really needed. That agreement was to hold the Hadith ceasefire and to monitor that. That ceasefire has since broken down. That front line has since shifted dramatically. And while the UNMHA, continues to publish good work, good stuff about the good work that it's doing about removing mines, monitoring the front line, really the reason for its existence seemed it went away probably 2021 2022. So it's a fair question, I think, whether it should actually still be in existence. Russia for its part said that it's important to keep the mission and that any stabilizing institution in Yemen is needed right now, and we shouldn't be taking that away. In the end, I do believe its mandate was extended, as well as the UN panel of experts mandate was extended. I believe I reported on that last week. We did see also at the UN, China's UN rep expressed a deep concern over the Houthi attacks and called on the Houthis to desist from attacking the international shipping, that kind of thing. As it relates to the Yemeni government, international affairs, we did see continued engagement, in particular from Roig Foreign Minister Dr. Shea Al-Zindani with a variety of ambassadors in Riyadh, where he's been based for the last little bit, including French Ambassador Korn Kamoun, UAE Ambassador Zobi, and Chinese charge d'affaires Xiao Qing. Nothing too much, sort of reporting from this pretty bog standard diplomatic engagement. One story that is noteworthy as it relates to the international affairs of the Roig came out on 11 July when a pro-Yemeni government media outlet reported that Yemeni government embassies are essentially in a state of paralysis or near collapse, as they have not received salaries for Yemeni employees since May 2024. They have not received salaries for local employees in 9 months, and that's resulted in a lot of lawsuits being filed against the embassies, and they have not received operating budgets since the beginning of 2025. And this is essentially, caused many of them to seemingly shut down or not be doing a whole lot of stuff. So yeah, just to give you a sense of the state of financial distress that the Yemeni government is in, that's not great when you can't even maintain embassies. It's also worth noting that due to the fact that these embassies aren't necessarily able to function all that well, the Houthis have at times been able to kind of exploit that and essentially impersonate embassy personnel and meet with foreign dignitaries in other countries. They've done this a couple times. I think they did it in Jordan. I think they did it in Egypt once. And every time that happens, a couple days later, they'll say, "Oh, the people will realize that it was the Houthis, and then they'll disavow the sort of meeting, say that it wasn't really what they were intending to do." But yeah, so not a whole lot great going on in Yemeni government diplomatic circles. Moving on over to the international affairs of the Houthi movement, we did see quite a bit of activity this week, particularly as it relates to obviously the conflict in the Red Sea, but also as it relates to Houthi domestic politics. So on 10 July, we did see Israeli media report that Israel is attempting to assemble a coalition against the Houthis. Ever since the 6 May ceasefire between the U.S. and the Houthis have not attacked have not attacked U.S. interests. The U.S. hasn't been bombing the Houthis, and Israel has been the main target of sort of Houthi attacks. Most Houthi attacks have been direct missile attacks against Israel, and most international activity against the Houthis has been Israeli airstrikes. And so the Israeli media, Israel seems to be getting sick and tired of this. They want to bring the U.S. back in, particularly following these recent shipping attacks, and are trying to get other people involved as well. Whether that'll actually happen remains to be seen. On 13 July, we did see Houthi Politburo member Mohammed al-Baghaiti say that the Houthis remain committed to the U.S. Houthi truce. And there's been quite a bit of discussion or confusion, perhaps, over did the Houthis actually violate any truce with the United States? And strictly speaking, based on what we know from publicly available sources, we don't necessarily know what's going on behind closed doors. No. So yeah, obviously attacking the international shipping is going to be a major concern for the United States. The Houthis haven't attacked a ship internationally prior to this for about 7 months. But according to what we know from US President Trump and the Houthis themselves, it's essentially amounted to the Houthis agreed to not fire at the US, and the US agreed to not fire at the Houthis. And whether Israel will be able to convince the US to maybe get back into the fray, I think is a major question. They're going to try, but whether the U.S. has that appetite, particularly after Operation Rough Rider didn't seem to hurt the Houthis all that much, it remains to be seen. The other major story this week relates to an Indian nurse who's been imprisoned in Yemen for 7 years now, Namisha Priya, whose picture here is on the right. She is a nurse who is convicted and seemingly did murder I believe her Yemeni sponsor or her employer, who was holding her passport, and it was a seemingly abusive situation. She, according to reports, administered a sedative to her employer to be able to then get her documents back, and that ended up killing him. So she's been convicted of murder and has been facing a death sentence. Her death sentence was supposed to be carried out on 16 July. There was a lot of interest, in particular in Indian media, as various politicians in India kind of tried to mobilize support and in various parties to try to get her, at least her execution, stayed. So that was postponed. That said, based on public media reporting, the family of the deceased or the victim in this crime is seemingly not willing to negotiate. There is a process in Yemen for those convicted of murder to be able to appeal to the family, pay blood money, and maybe not face the harshest punishment for that. But the family has said that the only thing we want is her to be executed. So whether that eventually happens remains to be seen. The Houthis, for their part, do seem to want to court India a little bit. So one of the major destinations that they negotiated with the Saudis to allow them to fly out of Sana'a International Airport, although that's currently not operational, is Mumbai. There is a significant Yemeni population in India. So whether they would go ahead and piss, India off directly like that, I think remains to be seen, but that is a factor. Moving over to politics and governance as it relates to the Yemeni government, not too much to report here. Obviously, economic and service conditions remain pretty bad. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the economic and humanitarian section. We did see on 7 July, Presidential Leadership Council Chairman Rashad Al-Alimi, who is still in Aden. Kudos to him for staying at Aden this long, I will say, as well as Prime Minister Salim bin Barak did meet with the head of the Central Bank of Yemen in Aden, Ahmed al-Muwabaki, on the economy and various measures that need to be taken to stabilize the economy. They've been having these meetings on a weekly basis for a very long time, and nothing seems to have changed as a result of that. So we'll see if they do anything. We also did see on 12 July the leadership of Yemeni government-aligned parliament, headed by Sultan al-Burkani, met remotely to discuss the investigatory committees that they said that they were going to try to establish to visit various governorates and Yemeni government-held areas. But the STC has said hell no to. We're not going to allow you to do that. So yeah, this is a picture. There's Yemeni government-aligned parliament has been criticized a fair bit as essentially a WhatsApp group. And this is, I think, a good picture of that. I guess they're trying their best, but yeah, a lot of its activity consists mostly of group video chats and that kind of thing. Moving on over to politics and governance in Houthi movement held areas. Really, a lot of the news coming out concerns continued Houthi repression of various activists and other such folks, in particular as it related to the death of the recently killed Sheikh Salah al-Hantus, who was a Quran memorization teacher in Raymah Governorate, I believe, or Raymah Governorate. As of 11 July, we did see pro-Yemeni government media report that Houthi authorities have abducted 12 relatives of Sheikh Hantus as well as a lawyer who published some sympathetic things on Facebook, so they've abducted them. We also did see on 12 July reports that Houthi authorities have abducted multiple Sunni imams and Quran teachers in Bayda Governorate, which is in the southeast portion of Houthi-controlled areas. I think this is obviously related to the Houthis' ongoing attempt to establish a hegemonic Zaidi kind of sectarian view of society. Yemen has for a very long time been home to both Zaidi Muslims, who are considered a sect of Shiism, and Sunni Muslims. A lot of the time, they haven't necessarily had that many problems. If you ask most Yemenis, most will say that Yemen was not a sectarian country. They don't even now don't necessarily view the Yemen conflict in sectarian terms, but the Houthis are definitely a sectarian group, and they are trying to impose an almost theocratic understanding of politics and society with themselves at the top. And as a result, they have historically had quite frosty, even violent relations with more independent men of the cloth, as you will, both Zaidi and Sunni, but in particular, they do tend to go after Sunnis and other non-Zaidi religious groups like that. We also did see on 13 July, Houthi authorities reportedly detained and been killed at a checkpoint Sheikh Ali Salah Jaktoum in Amran. His tribe subsequently mobilized, calling for vengeance as a result of that. This happens on a fairly regular basis. I don't imagine anything major is going to come out of it, but yeah, a continuation of the low-level political, sort of mobilization we see in Houthi-held areas in response to these different points of repression. Moving on over to military and security behind the front lines. In Abiyan Governorate, which is this long governorate between Aden and Shabwa, we did see continuation of tensions within Yemeni government-aligned security forces over control of tax checkpoints, because so much traffic, in particular fuel from Marib, Shabwa, and Hajmaut has to go through this corridor here. This has been a major sort of point of contestation with different Yemeni government or STC-aligned armed groups trying to control the roads so that they can tax them. So we did see, reports of near clashes and clashes between various security groups this past week. Some reports indicated that most of these took place within and among STC-aligned security groups, but others, notably, I believe Houthi-aligned media, did frame it as an STC Islah conflict. Didn't look too closely into it because of the specifics of these kinds of things. It happens almost all the time, and in terms of specifics, there's some nothing to be gained from understanding it, but in terms of this particular instance, it's just kind of a continuation of what we've seen for a while. We also did see on 12 July suspected AQAP armed attack on STC-aligned forces in Mudia district and central eastern Abiyan Governorate. This is where most of suspected AQAP activity in Yemen that's visible takes place. This killed an STC-aligned fighter and injured another. And in neighboring Shabwa Governorate, in Said district, we did see a suspected AQAP IED attack that killed one STC-aligned fighter. This is another major sort of hotspot of suspected AQAP activity, this kind of area around here. So that's that. Moving on over to behind the front lines, two notable seemingly Houthi-aligned individuals were detained in the Yemeni government-held areas this past week. Both claimed to be traveling for medical issues, and both were reportedly traveling due to the closure of Sana'a International Airport, which Israeli airstrikes took out in late May 2025. So in Aden Governorate, we did see on 9 July, former Houthi Foreign Minister Hisham Sharaf was detained at Aden International Airport attempting to fly out. Reportedly, he was trying to travel using a diplomatic passport that had been printed by the Houthis. So I know some people are very interested in what documents and other things the Houthis can forge. So he did have a Houthi printed passport, as well as a French passport as well. We did see on 12 July, there were some rumors that he had been released and sent to Djibouti, but on 12 July, pro-Yemeni government media reports that he remains in custody, in particular under the Shalal al-Sheikh run counterterrorism unit, amid rumors of that departure. Hisham Sharaf, it's unclear exactly why he was traveling. He could very well have been traveling for medical concerns, but at the same time, there's a lot of concern about Houthi leaders in particular traveling around and doing such stuff. Hisham Sharaf, he's GPC, so he's not part of the Houthi inner core. He was their foreign minister for a long time, so he is well known internationally. I wouldn't necessarily call him a Houthi hardliner or any such thing, or maybe doing like going to Iran to train to fight or anything. No, I don't. He's not that kind of guy. But it is interesting that he was attempting to leave there. Houthi authorities have, of course, condemned his detention and said that the detention of travelers could impact the prisoner file, and held the Yemeni government-aligned authorities responsible for his health and in his life, considering he was attempting to travel for ostensibly medical purposes. Second, this week we did see on 8 July, Mohammed al-Zaidi, who is reportedly a Houthi-aligned tribal leader with strong connections to Houthi-aligned smugglers and other such folks, was detained and arrested at Sarfate border crossing with Oman, trying to travel also using a Houthi printed passport. So he was detained, and then while they were trying to transfer him, tribesmen ostensibly aligned with him that were present in Mahra ambushed that sort of convoy, and resulted in the death of multiple Yemeni government military personnel, including a military Yemeni government commander. But he remains in custody. He was subsequently transferred to Reda, the capital of Mahra Governorate, after mediation from tribal authorities and that kind of thing. The Yemeni government subsequently also claimed to arrest those involved in the ambush, who are kind of family members and other affiliates of Mohammed al-Zaidi. We did see on 11 July 20 vehicles carrying Howlan tribesmen, ostensibly trying to visit or otherwise maybe break out Zaidi, attempted to enter Reda, but were turned away by Yemeni government-aligned security forces without incident. There is discussion among, within Yemeni government circles whether he should be Mohammed al-Zaidi, who claimed to be trying to travel to Oman for medical purposes, should be released. According to pro-Houthi media, at least some within the Presidential Leadership Council, including Tarek Saleh, said that he shouldn't have been detained. He should have been allowed to travel. Others accuse him of essentially being on a Houthi mission and being a Houthi operative for smuggling and other such things. So that some people in Mahra don't want him detained so that they don't drag Mahra into the wider conflict between, that's been going on in places further west for a long time. But we shall see. Let's see here. Moving on over to military and security along the front lines. Not too much to report. In Taz, we did see on 11 July a disputed shelling take place around Taz city that killed 5 children, which was particularly egregious. The actor is unclear. Each of the part of the Houthis accuse the Yemeni government-aligned forces, in particular this time Islah-aligned forces, and Islah claims it was the Houthis or a Houthi improvised explosive device or explosive remnant of war, perhaps is the better way to say it. Based on the publicly available information that I've seen from the most credible sources, it seems likely that this was the responsibility of the Islah forces. Further to the east in Dale Governorate, we did see on 11 July as well, STC-aligned forces claimed to repel a Houthi infiltration attempt along the Hajar front, kind of, bog standard reports of clashes. Of course, the big story this week is concerning maritime security, where we did see towards the end of last week and the beginning of this week, 2 major Houthi attacks, potentially a third one that wasn't necessarily super confirmed, or not a whole lot of details became available on it, but the 2 major ones where on the 6th July attack on the bulk carrier Magic Seas, which sank on 7 July, with the Houthis claiming responsibility for sinking it. They seemingly boarded it following its departure and following its evacuation and blew it up, based on what I'm seeing in this picture here. And we also did see on 7 July a Houthi drone and RPG attack on the bulk carrier Eternity Sea. This sunk the ship. This eventually sunk the ship and killed at least 4 members of the crew, with 10 other crew members evacuated. There still remain 11 missing. So the Houthis subsequently claimed 1 USV and 6 missile attacks on the Eternity Sea, and claimed to take the crew to a safe place. It's believed that the Houthis have something like 6 of the crew members, leaving about 5 missing, presumed dead. International rescue efforts have been ceased of the crew. So, we're looking at, potentially 9 crew members, maybe even, 15 crew members dead, depending on how many the Houthis had. And the U.S. has accused the Houthis of kidnapping the crew. This is major. These are two. So the Houthis have been doing this since October 2023. They've sunk, I believe, including these 2, 4 ships, and most often have not killed that many people. They've injured some people. I think they've killed a few people before this, but in terms of number of crew killed, 9 crew killed. That's very, very big for what the Houthis have done, and sinking 2 ships in particular this soon, one after the other. This is definitely intended to send a message that the Houthis mean business and that they still retain significant capabilities. Ostensibly, both of these ships were targeted because their parent companies had ships that were recently or going to be in Israel. In particular, the Houthis accused the Eternity Sea of heading for Eilat port. So this is continued escalation. We haven't seen any attacks since then, at least as of 13 July. This particular edition of the call cuts off at 13 July. But yeah, definitely big, and again, could very well. It's war risk premiums have shot up, significantly, from 0.3% value of the cargo to 0.7%, sometimes even getting up to 1%. And so this definitely, the Houthis seem to be back when it comes to attacking things in the Red Sea, which they had not done since December 2024. Moving on over to the Israel-Houthi conflict more generally, not too much to report here. So in addition to those 2 attacks, we did see Israel claim to intercept a ballistic missile launched from Yemen towards Israel on 9 July, and on 10 July, the Houthis claimed a missile attack on Ben Gurion Airport, which is kind of par for the course for what they've been doing. So continuing these attacks on Israel as well, as part of what they're calling is essentially a multi-front naval and air blockade on Israel, is essentially how the Houthis are presenting this, is saying, we're going to prevent ships and companies from going to Israel either by air or by sea, to put pressure on Israel to stop its assault on Gaza. There's been a lot of ink spilled over whether they would actually do this. Based on what we saw during the ceasefire in January and February of 2025, they would in fact do it. Moving on over to humanitarian and economic issues. In terms of humanitarian issues, we did see on 9 July UNOCHA head Tom Fletcher give his monthly briefing to the UN Security Council in concert with UN Special Envoy Grunberg, during which he focused on a couple of issues. One of these is this major humanitarian reset that the UN is essentially, because there's been massive cuts to humanitarian aid, not just in Yemen, but in particular also in Yemen. And so they're having to retool and refocus their efforts into what they're calling this humanitarian reset, which they're presenting as a more efficient use of resources, given the lack of resources. So he did stress the importance of that in stewarding resources better. That said, the lack of resources, the effect on humanitarian aid distribution is causing reportedly the highest malnutrition rates in Yemen since 2022. We did see on 10 July, adding injury. Upon injury, we did see a fire engulf the World Food Program warehouse in Marib Governorate. It's unclear exactly what caused this fire, but it did cause substantial damage to supplies, which ain't great. In particular, because it's been difficult for the World Food Program to bring aid into Yemen as a result of a lot of the airstrikes on the Red Sea ports. This was in Marib, so it was likely going to be brought in through Aden anyway, but not great. And then in terms of health and disease, we did see on 12 July, the Yemeni government launch its polio vaccination campaign. This is an annual it's a regular occurrence, targeting 1.3 million children with polio vaccine with World Health Organization support. The Houthis, I believe they held a meeting on cholera this past week, but they're notably not engaged, at least publicly, with this vaccination campaign. The Houthis have been notoriously anti-vax for a while now. They were very opposed to vaccinating people for COVID back in 2020, 2021, 2022. So that's fair. And here's Yemeni government Prime Minister Salim bin Barak administering a vaccine in Aden. Moving on over to humanitarian and economic issues as they relate to infrastructure, in particular transportation infrastructure. So the Israeli airstrikes on the Red Sea ports that occurred, I believe, 6 to 7 July, did significantly damage a lot of the berths at Hodeidah, Ras Isa, and Salif. So as of 30 June, Log Cluster did report that berths 2, 3, 4, and 6 were open at Hodeidah, able to receive 4 ships, although there was no major shipping liner that was operating out of Hodeidah. There was some limited feeder service. Following the attack on Hodeidah in early July, on 8 July, satellite imagery revealed strikes at Salif, Ras Isa, and Hodeidah, significantly damaging the berths at Hodeidah. So there is a concern, again, about the ability to bring in fuel and food and other such things to Hodeidah. And this raises the question of what exactly is Israel trying to do here? According to Israeli government officials, they are attacking the Houthis' ability to bring in weapons and conduct terrorist activities, more or less is what they're saying. In reality, if you look at it on the bare face, Israel is doing this probably for about 2 reasons. One is that it can't hit anything else. It's not really been able to target Houthi leadership in a big way. They went after Mohammed al-Ghamari a couple weeks ago and were able to severely injure him, but he lived, and he's not necessarily one of the more senior ones. So they're hitting what they can see. And one of the major things they can see is vital civilian infrastructure like the Red Sea ports, like power stations, like, that kind of thing. The other thing is essentially this is a form of total war. When Israel's saying that it's trying to interrupt the Houthis' ability to conduct terrorist attacks, what they're saying is that they want to cut off Houthi revenues. And that what they mean by that is they want to cut off food and fuel going in to Hodeidah port. And even like depending, it's implicit in a lot of these discussions, but like even talking about is fuel going to be able to go from Yemeni government to Houthi held areas? The implicit point is that we need to choke the Houthis off of food and fuel and these, or at least fuel, as some of the more humanitarian people say, we need to let food in, but they hit Salif, right? And Salif port is the grain port. They're trying to choke it off, and that it shows no distinction between the civilian functions of these ports and the military functions. And so perhaps those are inextricably fused, but I'm pretty sure that these are war crimes. I will say that publicly. And it definitely isn't something that should be discussed kind of willy-nilly. This is the port on which 70 to 80% of Yemen's civilians population relies for its food and fuel. And we're already seeing the effects of that in terms of increased fuel prices in the parallel market and other such things. I talked more about that last week. And so, just definitely it's worth noting. In terms of road infrastructure, we did see on 30 June aid to Houthi-held areas successfully delivered via Shahan crossing. This came following the Houthis, again, in a kind of battle of the ports, are seemingly refusing to receive international aid from Yemeni government-held ports Aden and Mukalla, and they're only going to bring it in if it comes in via Omani ports and via the Shahan border crossing over in the east with Mahra. On 11 July, we did see Houthi-aligned Transport Ministry also report that it completed paving of a major road linking Sana'a and Marib. I need to look a little bit more closely with that. Obviously, they frame this as a humanitarian development, and it probably is one. But particular, whenever you're talking about developing better road infrastructure around Arab, my head immediately goes to, is this going to help them in terms of logistics of another campaign? So something to keep an eye on there. In terms of energy infrastructure, we did see a number of developments. 7 July, we did see the Yemeni government cabinet ministerial committee hold a meeting to discuss ensuring the flow of hydrocarbons within Yemeni government-held areas, because each of the major oil fields has been blockaded or under threat of blockade over the course of the last several months, and that's caused significant issues for electricity generation in Aden. On 7 July, we did see pro-Houthi media reports that a Shabwa tribe had seized several Marib-bound gas tankers after the killing of one of the tribe's members by one of those blockades of the Marib field over the course of the last couple of weeks. So even though that seems to have been resolved, or at least we're not hearing about it, the after effects of that are still going on and ostensibly having effects on supply. Between 8 and 9 July, electricity temporarily improved in Aden. It was, at something like 22 hours out, 2 hours on, after emergency fuel arrived, but the fuel was very quickly depleted, and it seems to have gone back to being bad. We did see on 8 July, the Yemeni government aligned second military region held a meeting in Mukalla to discuss security of tankers. This came amid threats by the Hadramaut Tribal Alliance to prevent the shipment of oil from the Daba tanks, which are in Hadramaut, to Aden to ameliorate the electricity outages there. The HTA says that the fuel in those tanks are supposed to be used to finance electricity infrastructure in Hadramaut. So, that's again another potential point there. And we did see on 9 July Shabwa S2 workers, which is the field that's supposed to be pumping oil to Aden to ameliorate the electricity issues there. They did halt oil pumping in protest of the Yemeni government's failure to meet their demands. Last but not least, and I forgot to change the picture here. But in terms of banking and currency, on 10 July, we did see Yemeni government-aligned Central Bank of Yemen in Aden hold a meeting around payments, trying to unify the payment system and perhaps set up a fast transaction company to facilitate transactions. This comes following claims by the Central Bank of Yemen in Aden that it is more or less kind of been able to take control of the banking sector, or at least get most or all of the Sana'a-based banks to relocate to Aden, and seem to have a bit more momentum behind them in terms of being able to unify Yemen's financial sector under its control. And so they're talking about, how we're going to do that to continue providing financial services also in Houthi-held areas. That said, in terms of Yemeni government banking right now, it's not going great. As of 10 July, the Yemeni government rial exceeded 28.50 against the dollar, which is not great. It's historically low, and obviously having major impacts on ordinary Yemenis' ability to buy staples. But really, the big banking currency story this week came on between 12 and 15 July, when the Houthi-aligned Central Bank of Yemen in Sana'a first announced the distribution of 50 rial coins. So these are coins that the Houthis minted. That said, they were embossed with, I was going to have the picture here, but I forgot to change it. Embossed with, I believe, Idros Mosque in Aden. And then on 15 July, announced the introduction of 200 rial banknotes. So this is kind of a big deal. It definitely shouldn't be understated. The Houthis did something very similar to this last year when they minted a 100 rial coin, which also caused a lot of outrage. This is probably happening for two reasons. One is that Houthi currency, so the Houthis prior to this, or at least prior to last year, didn't mint any of their own currency. Yemen has historically had to have its currency printed in Russia and then get shipped in, and then they printed it that way. It's done it that way for decades. But the Houthis, didn't necessarily have these capabilities for a long time. So the Houthi money supply hasn't actually expanded all that much, but they won't allow newly printed rials from Yemeni government-held areas past 2018. because of inflation, and they want to stabilize the currency, so they're able to stabilize their currency at around 530, 550 against the dollar, while the Yemeni government currency is just really exploding in against the dollar, 28.50 now, right? So while the Yemeni government hasn't been able to stabilize its currency, the Houthis have. Um, because of the lack of expansion to the money supply and a couple other reasons. So yeah, so this already kind of divided Yemen into two separate economies, but ostensibly they were still kind of one single currency. But the point is, the Houthis have been using very, very old banknotes for a very long time. So we're talking banknotes from 2017. These banknotes aren't supposed to be circulating longer than like 6 months. They've going on 10 years now almost. This has caused major liquidity issues in Houthi areas because their banknotes are just falling apart. It's not tender anymore. It can't be really used anymore. So part of this is them trying to ameliorate that, trying to replace that. And so they were very clear in these statements that these notes and everything are only replacing deteriorated currency. They're being very clear that they aren't expanding the money supply. So there's that. And then the second reason they're probably doing this is because of what the Yemeni government and the U.S. have been doing with sanctions against Sana'a banks and getting all of the banks to relocate their headquarters to Aden. This is a way perhaps for the Houthis to fire back and say, screw you guys, if you're going to do that, we're going to do this in terms of the economic war for control of Yemen's economy. Obviously, the Yemeni government very much condemned this, said that it was a crime against Yemen's economy, and was further going to split Yemen's economy because now you do effectively have two separate monetary authorities that are ostensibly issuing different currencies that isn't necessarily going to be accepted in each other's areas. So that is for hardening the economic barrier. This is something that folks have been concerned about for a while now. So yeah, that's going to create problems there. Whether it's Armageddon Day, I think remains to be seen. The Houthis have been doing this ostensibly with the 100 rial coins for a year now, but it is continuing that deterioration. And given, this isn't necessarily the biggest broadside that they can do, I think, against what the FTO related sanctions against the Sana'a Bank. So maybe some more stuff will be in store. We'll see. But that is all I have from me. Thank you so much for listening. Again, feel free to check out all the links in the description, particularly as it relates to that ACSIS panel. And yes, if you have any inquiries or questions or anything, please feel free to reach out to me at info.nickjbrumfield@gmail.com. But I hope you have a great day. Thank you.